Hi, everyone, and welcome to the next video in our series of training lessons from Municipal Campaign School CA. We are so glad to have you here today. We are so grateful that you're taking time out of your busy schedules to explore what it means to run for municipal office. And we are excited that we can share these videos with you, hopefully, while knowing they're going to add some value into the world because of the great quality of speakers that we have. My name is Kurt Hammond, and I'm proud to be representing the Wellington County Municipal Campaign School today. Of course, we're in partnership with Guelph and Oxford, working with the dynamic volunteers there. And everything that you're seeing here today and others can be found at municipalcampaigschool.ca. I am really excited about introducing you to someone who's going to add incredible value to our conversations today, Karen Farbridge. I'm also excited because Karen's a really good friend, and she and I do this fairly often. We get together and chat, and we're all lucky that Karen's giving up some of her time today to spend with us. So, Karen, before I formally introduce Karen and give you some background on the greatness that is her, I want to just ground us in a land acknowledgement and a reminder that if you, as a candidate, are out at events and a land acknowledgement has not been done, this is a great leadership opportunity for you to be taking some ownership and responsibility for that. Every event you attend publicly must have a land acknowledgement now. It's not a nice to have, it's a must have. So this is some language that we've come up with at campaign school. You're welcome to borrow it. Certainly find some language that resonates with yourself and, of course, the community you want to connect with. So let's start there with a reminder that no matter where we're sitting, no matter where our screens are today, there were peoples, cultures, and traditions sitting on these very lands long before we were here. And these wise peoples did their best to help us steward our land, our water, and our air. Now, unfortunately, we have done a terrible job at listening to their wisdom, and our environment is now paying that price. So worse than that, in fact, much worse than that, is that we have yet to fully acknowledge that our communities are literally built on top of theirs. And as a country, we can no longer turn away from the economic, social, and emotional damage that we have done to generations of families across this country. This is a big conversation that we need to continue to have, and each of us need to be asking ourselves, what's our role in reconciliation? I myself am just coming to terms with the word settler, what that means, my role in repairing relations. So I don't have any answers today, but I want to remind us that as we're thinking about leadership, as we're thinking about building community, as we're thinking about serving others, those were values that were started and grounded in Indigenous cultures. So when we talk about those things, we are in fact continuing on the gifts from those cultures, and it's up to us to remember those leaders that follow us, who are talking about the same leadership and community building and service, that they are in fact continuing this tradition of Indigenous values. So it's important that each of us take some time to reflect on the land that we're on, our role and relationship with it, and each of us here in Canada has to remember that truth must come before reconciliation. So that's our land acknowledgement. Thank you for that. Again, as a candidate or as a leader in your community, you taking ownership over that, if it hasn't been done at meetings, is really, really important. So from there, Karen, thank you and welcome to municipalcampaigschool.ca. This is so good of you to join us. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for such a wonderful land acknowledgement and a personalized one. I think is appropriate, even if you have one just to read and that's where you're at. But the more that we can personalize these over time, the better as well, right?
Yes.
And I remember hearing an elder give a land acknowledgement at an event, and he said that it's the first step in your journey on reconciliation. And I thought that was just a really helpful way to frame it. And we've got
Yes.
many more steps together on that path, right?
Yeah. And a quick reflection, I've given that hundreds, thousands of times now. Every time I'm in front of a group, I'm giving it. It becomes so much, the first time you give it is really nerve-wracking. You think, oh, I'm
Yeah.
gonna, you're wrapped up in all that white privilege guilt and trying to figure it out, thinking you're going to offend someone. And to your point, the more we do it, the bigger those
Yeah.
steps can be. So yeah, I love that advice for having, anyone watching this today should have something that they're comfortable with in their back pocket, ready to use. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? Yeah.
Yeah, and I know, and one of the big challenges I know for people the first time is, am I going to pronounce names correctly, right? They're not names that are familiar to us because of our history. And so, a simple trick is just to Google, how do I say this
Yeah.
online? And you can
Yeah.
listen to it over and over again, and so that you can be prepared for when you have that opportunity to show that
Yeah.
leadership.
Yeah. Awesome. Such wisdom, and we're going to hear lots more of that from Karen. Let me just quickly introduce and set some context for the experience and knowledge that Karen brings to our conversation. Um, I'm going to read a bit of her bio or just reflect on her bio very quickly. Karen Farbridge is the lead at Karen Farbridge and Associates, which is a consultancy based in Guelph, Ontario. And for the past 30 years, Karen has worked in the not-for-profit, public, and private sectors to advance community growth, local decision making. She has led numerous community innovations around smart growth, downtown revitalization, open government, neighborhood development, community well-being, resource and natural heritage protection. And specifically, a real passion for Karen is around community energy. And she's well connected in those fields, in that world, that community energy sector. She's a respected speaker, and she's given hundreds of talks on on those issues here in Canada and around the globe. She's taught undergrad and graduate programs at the University of Guelph and York University. Today, however, we're drawing on Karen's experience as a municipal leader in Guelph. So Karen served as mayor for 7 years, and Karen, remind me, you were on council before that as well.
Yeah, I did 2 terms, so 6 years as a municipal councillor and then 11 years as mayor.
11 years, my apologies. So
No worries.
we're it's too long for me even to begin thinking about. So Karen brings just this wealth of knowledge and experience to what it means to not just run for election, but lead in municipal government. Maybe we'll have Karen back to talk about what leadership looks like after the election, because she'll have amazing insights. But as we're thinking about supporting you and running a campaign, the conversation we want to have with Karen today is around this idea of debate prep. And it's something that we've heard a lot of feedback from people on, that they get nervous about, understandably so, they've never done before. So our conversation with Karen is just going to be around this idea of what you as a candidate can be doing and thinking to prepare yourself for debates, whatever they look like in your community. So Karen, again, thanks for joining us. And I know that, and you and I've had the pleasure of working on 2 year campaigns, and I know you're so good at this. So we're chatting about debate prep. When we think about that topic, what does debate prep mean to you?
I think I believe it really starts, how you're preparing for the election, how you're preparing to, you've made the decision to step into this space, and I want to congratulate and thank everybody on who's will be listening to this who is thinking about this. It's a big courageous step to do that. So, you need to prepare for that. And when you're getting into this space, you're needing to really feel confident and clear about why you're there and what it is that you want to achieve.
Mm,
What are the important values and principles that you're bringing into the conversation, um, and and what are the issues and how you would address the issues, how what's important to you, and what
right.
do you want to say to people. And so, what I found in politics, one of the things that you have to prepare for is that people will say you said things that you never said, and
Yes.
people will say you've been places that you've never been. And so you need to make sure that you own your own message. And
Mm,
also, I mean, sometimes people will want you to put words in your mouth. Sometimes that's not badly intended. It's they're very supportive of you and make assumptions about what you might think about something, right?
right. Right.
But sometimes, depending on how aggressive your opponents are, your competition in an election is, they want to get you off what you want to say, right? They want to get you
Right.
off your message, right? Or they want to trip you up. So the more you can be clear about that, the better. And so I would start even before, you know, before the election campaign even gets rolling in any significant way, would be to actually put pen to paper and go through that thoughtful exercise of
Hmm.
putting down, okay, there's always key issues in an election. So, what are the key issues and what do I know about them, and what do I think about them, and what would be my position? Doesn't mean you have to have the answers, because
Yes.
often
Good one.
there aren't
Yeah.
answers, right? That's the democratic process, is to come to those answers. But what are some of the things that you would bring to the conversation, and how would you approach it? And then there's also issues that may not be on the radar in terms of what's being discussed in the community immediately, or what's being picked up as by the media as being important, which are really important issues to talk about, right?
Right.
And so what's important to you, as well as what's as important to the that's out there in the community. And again, why are they important to you? Why would you, if you were elected, why would you work to promote them, and have conversations in these issues and advance things in a certain area? And so I think that really sets the stage for everything. It sets the stage for when you're at the door, and it sets the
Right.
stage when media come with a survey and they have a bunch of questions you want to ask you on paper for the newspaper, for instance. Lots of organizations do the same thing. They want to hear your views on particular topics. So this kind of prep helps you be prepared to respond to that. And then it helps you at the debate as well, right?
Right. Right.
So, all these things are to me practice for the job, right?
Right.
Because
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
you are
Good.
successful, you will need to, speak at council meetings, at committee meetings, at public meetings about various issues. So, a debate is practice for that. Putting your thoughts down on paper is practice for that. Answering surveys is practice for that. Talking to
Right.
people at the door is practice for that, right?
I really love that insight that the debate, because often, and I'm guilty of this in campaigns that I've supported as well. The debate's this big thing. Oh, we got to get ready for the debate. It's big, and it is important, but we need to view it in context of this, all the communicating and all the engaging that we're doing on a campaign as well, right?
Yeah.
It's an important step, but it is but one step on this longer journey of winning a campaign. I like it's really good thinking.
Yeah, I think, the public speaking part of it makes it easy for us to think of the debate as something bigger than it is, right?
Right.
Because that's often something that people haven't had the same experience with, and so that makes it more daunting. And then all of a sudden, the debate is something big in your mind, right? And in terms of all the things you can do, the debate's not really all that up there, as
Right.
important to the campaign. It's one part of it. And, to be honest, I think I have watched a lot of candidates not go to debates because they have summed up it's not important to them. And I think there is some truth in that, only to the point of it's part of the democratic process, and it's important for you to be out there, and you should never not show up for a debate, right? But
Absolutely.
I think
Absolutely.
but I think the fact that some people don't, it shows you, is an indication. Put it in perspective and see it as an opportunity for you. And it's an opportunity for you to reach some more people, and it's also an opportunity for you to practice what it's going to be like to be in the role, right?
Yeah. So if we, yeah, and so managing our anxieties or worries or excitement around that is a really, I think, important tool, right? And yeah, the more we realize it's part of this bigger piece, the better. With that, as we think about, and especially municipal elections, maybe especially in rural communities, they're going to look different than they would in a Guelph or a Toronto. And there might be, if you've got six wards plus mayor plus school boards, you might have like, 15 or 20 people up on stage, right? So again, every circumstance will be different. I'm wondering, what advice do you have for people who are heading into one of these situations and, acknowledging it's part of the process and want to do really well with it? What things should we keep in mind as we get ready for these events?
Well, I think one approach you could take that I found very helpful, particularly if, when you go into the debates, it's often focused on what are the key issues that have emerged in the campaign. Right or wrong, those are the issues, right? and
Right. Yeah.
and so, you'll have 1 or 2 minutes to sort of introduce yourself and lay down what your sort of your platform is, what your key messages is. Tightly script that, practice
Yes.
it,
Yes.
don't deviate from it, because you've only got a minute or two, and make sure you get that message out. If you have to read it, right? If you're not comfortable enough to remember it, to be able to deliver it, and don't feel bad about that, right? The most important thing is to get your message out clearly and succinctly, in the way you want it done, right?
Yeah.
And then when it
Can I,
comes to
sorry,
sort
I'm
of,
interrupting. Sorry,
yeah,
can I just add one word in there? I'm sorry, Karen. Authentically as well, right? Like, it's really important that you sound like you
yeah,
and that you don't try to be someone else in that room.
yeah,
Whatever your voice is, it matters and it belongs.
yeah,
And the more authentic you can be, whether it be reading or speaking, that's
yeah.
just mission critical. Yeah. Sorry, I cut you off there. I apologize for that.
No, 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 that's a great point. And the more that you can just show up as yourself and not and sort of lose, the pressure of the debate,
Yeah.
and show up in a conversation with people as yourself. Um, to some extent, I mean, obviously, it's not what you say is important, but how you show up is more important, right? And
Hmm.
people will
Yes.
respond to that and
Yeah.
connect to that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then with respect to, specific issues that will likely get asked, I always found it easy. It's called a message box, and where you very thoughtfully think about, okay, what's my message? What am I saying about me and my position on this particular issue? And what might whether it's the competition or whether it's a different perspective, sort of a different point of view, what are they saying about themselves as well, right? And so you get that. And then what do they say about my point of view?
Yeah.
And sort of be really clear about what you might, so you're preparing for what you might hear in the meeting, so that you're not sort of tripped up by it, but you're prepared for what you might hear about yourself. And then what do you say about their position as well, so that you can be very clear about what you want to say about why you take a different point of view on a particular issue. And
Right.
I think it's a very thoughtful way of, I think when you go through that, you start with your own message. I think I often found my own message would change, not in terms of
Mm.
what I believed, but how I expressed it, right? And so that you can again be very authentic in terms of how you're positioning your message. And then if you did have to, you found yourself needing to um, position your message as different from another person's perspective, you can do it in a way that when you leave that meeting, you feel good about, right? And I think
Yes. Yeah. Great point. Yeah.
that's really key, is that you come away and you feel good about what you said. Now, this is a tough one. I mean, often these things are recorded. I would encourage people to listen to themselves, because
Great
I
advice.
know, if this in your first experiences, you'll leave the meeting and you'll think you sounded terrible. You will think you sounded, incoherent, that you stumbled, all these things. And when you listen to yourself, you will realize that 99% of the time, that's not the case. You
Right.
sounded reasonable, you sounded coherent. Our view of ourselves in the moment is very different than what other people see. And then, of course, you can always learn. Well, I do wish I had said that slightly differently, or I had done that in a different way. So you can learn from that as well.
Yeah,
But the big lesson is that you're never as bad as you think you
that's true.
sound. Yeah,
That's great advice. And this idea of always learning and adapting, like I think there's something there, but the more you do this,
yeah,
if not easier, the more comfortable it becomes, right? And I think in again some campaigns that I've been involved with, I as someone who's been supporting communications, I want to make sure that the candidate has you know the key messages or key points, but then and they need to say them in their own voice, right? So I think you talk to us a bit about the actual prep of maybe your own experience. The intro and outro is tight and solid, and you've practiced that, and you can do that in your sleep. The stuff in between, like how much writing do we do? In preparing, thinking about these issues, how much actual writing do we do? What's the best way to prep make sure that we're coming across um,
yeah.
authentically
I think
and
you know I think ideally if you can you know ditch the paper in the middle bits, right, and
right.
have done your prep, and when the questions get answered, really just answer from the base of what your own experience, how you would come to it. Don't try to answer with facts and details um, you know, that you've perhaps learned just recently, but that aren't part of your experience, right?
Yes, yes,
So incumbents, will come in with words and responses that come from having sat in many meetings and having read many reports. If you're new into this, you don't have that. Well, don't try to pretend you do, right? And so speak from your own experience and speak from why you've put your hand up to want to be considered. So rely more on that as opposed to
yeah,
trying to emulate someone else in the room who comes from a different background, has different resources and tools at their disposal, right?
right, yeah. And that's probably the one thing that unnerves people the most is what are you going to do about stormwater drainage and when it overflows, right? Like,
Yeah.
so advice for people on when you get that blank, straight up question around an issue or a topic that, to your point, we just don't have that experience with yet. What do we do when we get in those situations?
Well, I think you say, how would you address it? You don't provide an
Perfect.
answer because incumbents all the time provide answers that are wrong. So, you know, so don't think that just because an incumbent has said something that it's actually factually true, right? That's not always the case, right? So it's less about the what, but how you would deal with something and why you would deal with it in that way, right? And our democratic system is has incredible resources. The administration at City Hall, the employees that are there, and their specialties and their expertise. They're there for a reason because they know their stuff. They know their area. They know their expertise. And so you want to respect that part of the conversation as well. So you would be working with the
Right.
expertise that's within City Hall or Town Hall, and engage the community in working through the right solution, right? That addresses a variety of stakeholders' interests. I mean, that's the other thing I think is important to think about. Every time I thought, well, this is an easy issue. This should be easy to get. We will. This won't take much time, and we'll be able to get through it in council. Every time I thought that, it was like a slap in the side of the head to be reminded that there are always stakeholders, many stakeholders on an issue, and you'll be surprised by a different perspective, and those perspectives need to be considered and can very often, if not change direction, certainly make sure that direction is more sensitive to those stakeholder needs, right? or it might change a direction that a council is going in when they learn a new stakeholder's perspective on this, right?
Right.
Or a new
Right.
group in the community. So I think you also need to, be honest and open about that, and that your values are that you want to make sure that all perspectives are heard before, finally making a decision. And that is perspectives in the community, perspectives within the administration, as well as your colleagues around the table, right?
Right. Right. I want to pick up on that word perspectives for a bit because most of the people watching this are going to be, we're assuming going to be female or from other equity seeking groups who haven't run for office before. Um, Tough gig, full stop.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what advice you have for women, other equity seeking groups who are running for the first time and kind of stepping into this, in this very environment of a debate. And you and I you've shared some great stories, well, terrible stories with me about some of your experiences, in debates. And without, only sharing what you can, but I'm wondering what advice do you have for someone who is going to be looking and maybe sounding different than the rest of the people around the conversation? What advice do you have for them specifically to get ready for this situation?
Well, my very first um, all candidates debate, I had an individual who said something to me right before I had to speak, one of the other candidates, and I won't share the details, the gory details of that.
It wasn't
But
good.
no, it wasn't good. Whispered it to me in my ear just before I was to speak. That quite floored me, the level of misogyny and sexism in that comment in that moment. And I wish that I could say that I was, you know, well prepared to hear something like that. I wasn't. So, I think candidates will experience that, right? That you're not prepared. But I did in that moment, is what my advice would be. I did in that moment afterwards I had all kinds of, well, I wish I'd said that, or I wish I'd said this, or I
Right,
wish I did that, right? But really, what I did in that moment was exactly the perfect response. And that was just to turn to the audience and start speaking and bringing my voice into the room. And
great.
so I think, it's, it sounds very simple, and I know the situations can be very hard and very upsetting. But what they're trying to do is to take your voice out of the room. They're trying to close you down. They're trying for you not to have your voice, and even in reacting to them, they've won, right? In that
Right, right, right,
they've
right.
taken you they've taken you away from being in that space, and they've taken you to react to what they've just said to you. So it's like, turn away from it and speak to the people in the room because they want you there. Your opposition doesn't want you there for obvious reasons, but the room wants you there. There are people in the room that want
Great.
you in that space, and they want to hear from you. And so, yeah, that's your best response in thinking about that and being prepared for it. It's your voice has a right to be in that room.
Yes, love that. Um, it's brilliant. We're past our time. This has been such a great conversation. Last piece of advice you would have for someone getting ready for their first, public debate environment. One last little bit of wisdom you can share.
Just, yeah, there's it's just, so it's part of it, right? And embrace it as part of the process. And there are lots of people out there that are so grateful that you're doing it,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which includes all the people at Municipal Campaign School, and that's one of the reasons that we're leaning in and sharing of our time and passion for better democracy. So, to everyone watching this video, to Karen and to Karen's exact point, there are people out there who want to see you win. They want to see you enjoy this experience, and we need your voice around these decision-making tables. So, um, municipalcampaignschool.ca is hopefully going to is filling with lots of great advice and insights like this. So we encourage you to keep watching these videos, share them with others who you think might be interested. And if you haven't already done yet, so please sign up for our newsletter where we'll keep you posted on our next events, hopefully some of which in person soon. Karen, with that, thank you, thank you, thank you. You are such a gift and you're so smart, and I just love chatting with you. And this has been a lot of
Yep,
fun. So
my
thank you
pleasure.
very, very much. Thank you.
My pleasure, Kurt. Always a pleasure.
Thanks, Karen. We'll talk to you soon, eh?